books, but it could be an accumulation of events. And most of the work we've done in Australia is more with the soldiers, returning servicemen, and we work extensively with Soldier On to assist them with the returning servicemen. And so a lot of what we do relates to military folk, and it's very different to the post-traumatic stress of civilian people. The military post-traumatic stress, and it may be adjustment, it may not be pure post-traumatic stress, there may be an adjustment stress, is really as a result of an accumulative effect. They seem horrendous and being part of horrendous images, events on a continual basis. And it continues and continues, and every so often they get a timeout. Whereas in the civilian population, unless it's a case of workplace bullying or parental or family abuse, it can also be a single event. It could be a traumatic accident, it could be a million different causes of it. But the commonality is that people are afraid of triggering the memories of that event. People are scared of the fear. They're afraid of the fear, almost afraid of being afraid of the event. And essentially what's happening is that they close down because of that, and they become powerless. And this is what we try to work through as a group of people. The Center for Service and Therapy Dogs, we have a very focused mission statement. We work with people who are at risk. We work with them in very formalized programs. We work with them with very specifically trained dogs. And we aim in the end for them we aim to improve their quality of life, enhance their independence, and facilitate and increase participation in society. We don't anywhere say that we're going to cure these things, and we can't. We cannot cure autism. We can't. We can't cure seizures. There are really clever people who are working on it. We aren't those people. We say, okay, you're getting seizures. If our dogs can predict when you're going to get the seizure, you can live with the seizure to the best of a bad bunch. But at least you know when it's going to happen. You can put yourself on the side. You can be prepared for it. And it's much the same with post-traumatic stress. If we can't cure it, and it's really tough to do that curing. The people that are working with it are doing, certainly in Pakapanyal and at the Austin, they're doing really great things, but it's really difficult for the soldiers, it's really difficult for the folks who suffer from it. So maybe we go around it, and we are a for-benefits organisation. We're not a charity. We actually accept that we have a responsibility to the community in which we work. And we should be helping our client, but we should be working within the community and helping the community. As I said before, we are dog-centric people. We actually believe in dogs, and because of that, we have to have at the very base of what we do a training philosophy. And this is how we put it. We actually firmly believe that both the client and the dog need to be trained. The dog needs to be trained less than the client. The dog needs to be socialized. We don't actually train our dogs. My son has a dog, and there are a lot of dogs floating around. If you told the dog to lie over and kick its feet in the air, our dogs would look at you like you're mad. In most cases, if you told our dogs to stay, they would look at you like you're mad. We don't train our dogs to stay. We in fact don't want our dogs to stay anywhere. Even if our dogs don't sit, it's not so important to us. What is important is that our dogs retain their natural instincts, is that our dogs retain their ability to think for themselves. Our dogs must not be allowed to become prompt dependent, because a lot of our clients aren't able to prompt the dog, especially not when they're having an attack or they're having a seizure. They just lose their cognition for a bit. They lose where they are. The Alzheimer's, they forget where they are, they forget what they're doing, they forget why they're there. The dog needs to react from the situation, from sensing the person. Our puppies are never ever chastised. They're never shouted at, they're never hurt, they're never beaten or anything of that nature. And indeed, the puppy can do what she likes. Our job is to ensure that the puppy grows up without a single fear. The puppies are socialized to the nth degree. They go on every single mode of transport, in every shopping center, on cars and trains, and wherever you can think, that's where our puppies go. They socialize so that they're never afraid. Our puppies are never exposed to the disability that they're going to be helping. Because we don't want our puppies to become scared of a panic attack. We don't want our puppies to become scared of a seizure. Mostly we're going to run with our puppies for about a year without our client. At the end of that year, if the puppy is mature, and Yariv is at the back, he's the only person who takes that decision. And if the client is ready, or the client's environment is ready to accept the puppy, at that point they'll come together, they'll learn a little bit about each other, and then we'll bond them very tightly together. And then we generally work with them for a further year. So mostly we're working with our clients for around about 2 years. A little bit about us. It's Yariv is at the back. Yariv is working in this industry in Israel and Europe for the last 25 years. He came through to Australia 2.5 years ago, and he's working in the industry over here. He's accepted as a leading practitioner of this, and he leads us in all of our program development. As you're going to hear from him later on, he's make sure that we actually treat our animals properly and we don't do anything wrong. And obviously there's myself. Around the room, I'm not going to introduce them. There are a lot of people who are wearing uniforms. We're all interventionists. We all work with clients. Everybody in the room is expected to work face-to-face with the client, including my son. We're very, very involved in being inclusive. We don't, as a group, see disability. We see ability, and we'll seek out ability. We're active in education facilities. We look after individual service dogs, residential aged care, and we do a lot of public lectures like this. We do them regularly. There's never a cost to them, and we do them as a public. We work. I talk at AMAZE, the Epilepsy Foundation, Children's Hospital, the epilepsy conferences, and lots of schools. We do in-services for all of the schools. A lot of the health and community services are doing services for, so we do a fair amount of that type of work. So why dogs? And I'm going to ask On to come up and give us to us from a professional perspective, because I'm not a professional at it. But suffice to say that there's a very old proverb that the greater love that there is, the greatest love that you can have, is a mother's, and then it's your dog, and then it's your sweetheart, or your partner. And that's probably true. You know, I never have to argue with Spot. And Spot generally just does what I ask her to do. And then if I ask her, she knows when I'm not feeling nice, she comes and she rubs herself against me. She knows exactly what to do. I wish other people would. But seriously, why dogs? And folks always say that the chimpanzees or the apes are our closest relatives, and they are genetically. But socially, a dog is our closest relative. Our dog has evolved with us for the last 30,000 years. The dog had to know to read our body language. The dog had to know to understand exactly what we were doing. The dog had to, it was for the dog's survival. The question is, in the end, is who helped whose survival? Did we help the dog to survive, or did the dog help us to survive? Most anthropologists today think it's the other way around. You see that dog at the back there, confused for a horse? So beautiful. Anyhow, so I think on that end, I'm going to ask On to come and carry on and give it to us from a professional perspective. And then we'll dive, once we've looked at the concept of the dog and why it's so important, we'll dive into actually looking at post-traumatic stress, how we see it, how we go, how we attack it. And yes, it is an attack. It takes a long time, but that's what we aim for. What we're doing with the pups, into the socialization of the pups, every single step, from the whelping of the pup, from when the pup, as Noah was saying, is four weeks old, and even before that, We start working with the pup, we start socializing the pups, so that the pup grows up fearless. There's many, you heard on go on about the research, and yes, there is some research, there's more and more research coming out, but I honestly believe the bottom line is we actually quite like dogs, and they actually quite like us, and I think that's what gives us the magic to go here. It's also quite important to remember that in most cases of post-traumatic stress, and we're going to go into that side of the events now, there's a most of the trauma that people suffer is caused by people. Very few times is that trauma not caused in some way or in some shape by a person. The distrust, the fear is towards humans. In most cases, sometimes an event is an inanimate, could have been caused by something inanimate, but generally it's a human. The fear is the human form. The animal, the dog, is generally not the cause of it. The dog is normally something which is trusted. And certainly this is what's being used as a base reasoning in the military at the moment. And it's a global military. The military are probably the main proponents of using dogs for post-traumatic stress, and they're doing most of the research. It's not all easy research, and mostly the research is not coming up with perfect results. It's just too complicated and too difficult. But clinical observations, and there are heaps of them, they're not scientific, but they're clinical. These are folks who are talking about what the dogs are doing, and there's lists of them, but invariably extremely positive, invariably allowing the person another staunch to hold, another anchor, another center, another something to build their life around, something which is not threatening, something that they can trust, something that they can rely on to alert them if something's happening, something that they don't have to be hyper vigilant about walking outside, because they understand the dog will alert them and protect them if something happens. If somebody's about to have a panic attack, the dog can warn you about to have a panic attack, and you can go backwards. You can, and this is what the dogs are doing. They're allowing you to sleep at night. They're allowing you to decrease your startle response because you're trusting the dog. You're able to become more assertive as well, because we teach you to be assertive with the dog, and you can be assertive with other people. So, without the research, there's a lot of anecdotal, there's a lot of clinical work. We are research-based. We try and do the research. We try and follow results, research-based results, but it doesn't exist. And they're trying to do the research out there, but it's extremely difficult. It's very hard. You can never do a double-blind study. You can see if you've got a dog or not. It's hard to do a double-blind. But from our perspective, the end game is not to give a dog. That's not the end game. That's actually the easy part of it. The end game is actually to give them a dog that's going to allow them to become empowered, to allow the person to live and to contribute positively towards the society. This is what we're trying to do. This is where we're trying to get to. But it's fantastic. We're all dog lovers. But I'll put out huge red flags, and I do. Beware. A dog, we're dealing with a relationship between a dog and a human. Now, in 9 times out of 10, we always say that the dog is the one which might react unexpectedly. But in this case, it's the human that might react unexpectedly. And the effect of that reaction on the dog can be really dangerous. And there was an issue in America. They were running what was going to be the flagship research, and it collapsed. One of the dogs, one of the soldiers became too irritable. The dog became irritable and became aggressive. The dog became scared of the person. So it can happen. we need to be extraordinarily careful, and we need to have a very, very detailed protocol. We need to run a process with the dog and with the person according to very, very strict guidelines. And yes, if the dog hasn't arrived at the end point, the dog shouldn't be used. It's not a case where it's the extreme moment. It's where the doctors and the psychiatrists are just getting you to a point where you're healthy enough to continue. And it's very, very difficult at that point. We call that the stabilization stage. There's nothing really that we're doing with that, except in using dogs in hospitals. A dog will come to you as a therapy dog, not a service dog. You will not own the dog. It's a dog that's been extremely highly trained. It's very resistant, very resilient. And that dog we take into hospitals to work with the therapists in the hospitals, to work with the soldiers in the hospitals, to work with the people in the hospitals, to jump on their beds, to lick them, just to make it a little bit easier, to calm down the anxiety, to allow that anxiety to subside. These are the same dogs that you'd be using when you're talking to your therapist or to your psychologist in a consultation. They're therapy dogs, they're sitting quietly, you're stroking the dog, you're patting the dog, and that's what we're getting from the dog at that perspective. It's not a service dog. It's too difficult for a service dog to bond with somebody in that critical and that extreme stage. So our contribution to that is, as we do now, we take dogs in to visit, and they're very, very hardened dogs. They're dogs that have seen most everything in their lives. It's like our dog Spot, where nothing really phases her. Following that stage, we come to a point which is called the balance stage, where you're not really comfortable to go home yet. So you're in rehabilitation, or you're in a halfway house. You're starting to find your way. You're out of the hospital, and you're starting to find your way around. And again, over here, what we're trying to do is to get people to train dogs. We work with dogs, and we work with folks to get them to train dogs, to go out and to work with us and our interventionists to train dogs, to build a bond with the dog. It's a come and it will go. It's not going to be their own dog, because we don't want the dog to be scared of them. And over here, our biggest fear for them is the boredom. Our biggest fear is not waking up in the morning. Our biggest fear is becoming substance dependent, starting to abuse substance, starting to abuse, it could be alcohol, it could be the medications, it could be one of a million things. And over here, it's far more important for us to try to be empowering of the person, allow the person to be empowered by being able to train a dog, showing them how to train a dog, letting them win at training a dog, letting folks succeed. And this is not just for folks who have retreated into themselves. This is for most anybody. To get them to succeed, to get them to do something positive and to win at it, and to give them a self-image. The last area is where somebody has left the rehab centers or the hospitals, and now they come home. They come home to their family, and they lost a lot of the assistance that they had. They might be into weekly or bi-weekly meetings, but they're actually confronted by real life issues again. They're confronted by home life, children, estranged from children, estranged spouses, not being able to relate to your partner because of what happened to you, not being related, maybe not being allowed to go back into your old family situation, maybe moving into a foster situation. So no, run. That's it for that. Sorry about that. But it's at this stage, it's in this area that we feel that a service dog can assist the most. It's very easy to lose it in this stage because you don't have the rigid guidelines that you had from before. Now you're out there in the world, you're out there living free. You're exposed to everything that worried you, you're exposed to all of the triggers. And possibly it's the most difficult area for most folks. This is where the wife doesn't recognize the husband, for instance. We have a project which I'm hoping Eric will have a few minutes, he'll have a chat about it, where the wife said to us very simply, she says, all I want is for my children to meet their father. The man that's here is not their father, he's somebody else. And so and you know, it's very simple things like that that folks want. It's not more than that. So in these cases, we start to work with somebody in parallel to their dog. And we train the dog on the outside, as we discussed earlier on, and we start working with our clients with therapy dogs. We start teaching them how to work with a dog, how to train a dog. We use the dog to take them out, and Yariv will discuss the relationship building at that stage with the folks and how delicate it is. At round about a year, we bring the dog in, and then the dog has a number of roles that we aim for the dog to achieve. None of these roles is to cure the diseases, and there's a whole range of them. That's not the role. The role is to allow the person to live with it, to contribute positively to society, and in time the professionals that are dealing with him will address the trauma and try and assist them. But the type of things that we're talking about is allowing that if somebody gets confused outside, the dog knows to bring them home. The dog knows the way home, the person follows the dog and gets home. The dog gets to the door, will bark, and somebody will allow the person in. If you're about to have an abnormal situation, if you get very stressed, the dog will interrupt you. The dog will bite your ankle, pull you, and you will understand, we've taught you, we'll teach you that when the dog alerts you like that, that you will stand back, that you don't have to go forward anymore. You can actually retreat, you can go and sit down in the corner, calm down, breathe, pat your dog, lie down, let your dog lie on top of you. Hold your dog, let your dog get the sensory input from the dog, be grounded with the dog, and then you can get up and get going again and walk around that area if need be. If you get into the point where you're just going to repeat the same action, and we were looking at a video of one of our clients the other day, and this young lass she has an issue, but when something's going to confront her, it's almost like she just keeps going around to the same point. And the dog recognizes that, and the dog interrupts her. She stops and she understands that things are different and she needs to work. So we take each, I don't want to call it a symptom, but everything that's going to go to the next level, and we try and interrupt it. Obviously having the dog forces you to be here and now. You can't pretend that you're not here. You've got the dog, you've got to look after the dog, you've got to take the dog to the toilet, you've got to do things with the dog's going to lick you, you're not going to ignore the dog, that's for sure. And what we're looking for is longer periods of feeling good. But the role of the dog is not exclusively for the client. Let's not forget that the client is not an island. The client is part of an environment. The client has family, the client has carers, and the dog has a role for all of these people. And sometimes the role for the carer is, I hesitate to say more important, but certainly just as important as the role for the client. It's the carer who's as exposed to the trauma as the client. And one of our clients' doctors turned around on the daughter and said that the daughter is probably more traumatized than the father because of what the father happened. So there's just as much emphasis that we place on working with the families and working with the carers, and the dog has a role to the carer. The dog allows the carer to relax. The carer doesn't have to be on alert the whole time. If the person goes for a walk, the carer can relax because she knows, or he knows, that the dog is with the person. The dog is trained to navigate, and allows him just to relax a little bit. Also reduces this dependency the entire time. You're dependent on your carer. You can never the carer can never let go. All of a sudden the carer can stand back and say, okay, the dog's there, the dog's trained, it should be better, it should be okay. If something's going to happen, the dog will alert. And the dog can actually alert the carer remotely as well. and the carer has a GPS on the dog, so they know where the cared person is, where the client is. From the client's emotional well-being, we've spoken a lot about it. Walk down the street, Ons did it, I'm not going to go through it again, I know time's late and I want you to talk. But the dog's around, people stop, talk to you. You go to training, you go to the park, you go wherever you go. The dog requires to go to the toilet, I'm sorry, it actually does. You've got to wake up in the morning to take the dog outside to go to the toilet. Otherwise you're cleaning up the mess in the house, it's not pleasant. The dog has to eat. You've got to wake up and feed the dog. It's a fact. You have to walk the dog. You have to do, we say to our clients, you've got to measure 10,000 steps. I know this is magic 10,000 steps. And we don't say you have to do it. We don't care whether you walk or not. But the dog has to do it. So you must go for a walk with the dog. So it's a conjunct, there's a responsibility. You're giving our client a responsibility and the dog's helping on the other side of it. The physical well-being we spoke a little bit about, but this daily routine, these are what keeps somebody working, it keeps somebody focused, it keeps somebody on track. Being able to go for a walk and buying something, being able to go out the house is a great step. Being able to go out the bedroom is sometimes the first step. Sometimes being able to get off the bed is the first step. And this is what Yariv and his folks confront each day. To get somebody to go out the house is, for us in some cases, a celebration. And it might only last for one day and the person might retreat back. But each step and having the dog allows that person to feel confident that the dog is going to look after them. And if we can get our clients out to walk in the street, we're cooking with gas. If we can get them to walk into a shop with their dog and to rely on their dog and to know that their dog's there to help them and to buy the shopping, we're cooking. If we can take that client into a shopping center to buy something, that's even better. One of the things we do with our clients is we ask them what their bucket list is. What do they want to do that they can't do? And that's what we aim for. That's what we try and achieve. One of our clients wants to fly. He wants to get in an aeroplane and to fly to anywhere. Understanding that his trauma comes from aeroplanes. It's a huge stretch of the imagination to go through an international airport with his dog, to do the searching, to do the x-rays, to stand in queues, to smell the aeroplanes, to smell the diesel. These are huge. This is what we would aim for with him. We're not there yet, but we believe we will get there. Do we cure it? No. But do we allow him to live positively? That's what we're trying to do the whole time. Whatever we do with somebody, it has got nothing to do with anything but trying to empower the person, trying for the person to get onto an empowerment cycle, trying for that person to understand that there is a new reality, that they can have a different role, they can have the same role or a different role, that they can succeed, that they can again believe in themselves, that they can go into inclusion, and so the cycle goes. Unless we achieve that, unless we achieve this perceiving a new role, unless we achieve the gaining an awareness, we're not going to do anything. That's what the dog allows us to do. The dog actually allows us to get onto that cycle and to stay onto that cycle because the person can trust the dog. The person can work with the dog, and we've worked with the clients for 2 years to do just that, to get onto this cycle. I'm going to ask Yariv to come for 5 minutes and talk about